Defying expectations can be a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it's nice to be surprised, but on the other, it can lead to disappointment or obscure an anime's positive qualities. Saiyuki falls into both categories because its trailers, synopsis, and introduction create anticipation for a gritty, action-packed Journey to the West spin-off, feeling similar to your average shonen battle series. Instead, its best traits are the opposite of what that fandom typically enjoys. In a nutshell, Saiyuki is a dramatic, character-driven narrative set within an episodic format predominantly targeting women. It's a josei. Although it has intense battle arcs and many of its one-off episodes includes fights, it's less about combat and more about emotion. Plus, I found most of its fight animation underwhelming until later entries. In addition to misunderstandings, Saiyuki's convoluted watch order likely intimidated many potential fans. Today's beginner's guide aims to connect a good anime with the right audience by briefly reviewing the entire franchise without spoilers and providing a concise watch order. Saiyuki is set in a world where humans and yokai live together harmoniously until evil mind control wave divided them by randomly turning honest yokai into mindless evil drones. Our heroes mostly consist of dark, mysterious, and emotionally scarred adults on a quest to stop the minus wave and prevent the resurrection of the bold demon. While you'd think they're heavily motivated to achieve this goal, they don't really care. Progressing its main plot is unimportant here, and in this case, it's not a bad thing. It likely has a lot to do with the context of its creation. Saiyuki was created by Kazuya Minekura as a doujinshi inspired by Doraemon's parody movie of The Journey to the West. So it's basically a parody of a parody, and everyone saying it's an adaptation should stop and read the original novel or wait for my upcoming beginner's guide. As for its haphazard approach to plot progression, I don't know the exact details of its rise in popularity. Still, I can only imagine doujinshi artists don't plan to get serialized, let alone expect their story to become an expansive multimedia franchise spanning decades. So instead of the linear narrative you might expect, Saiyuki trails off into countless standalone episodes and several mini-arcs with little impact on its main plot. However, in its defense, most of these side quests were far more engaging than its original direction. In fact, subsequent installments began chapters and episodes reminding us that its main plot isn't important and that you should enjoy it for the moment. Ironically, this sentiment saturates Saiyuki to its core. It's essentially four close friends on the world's longest road trip with God's credit card. They've suffered so much in their past that it's like a healing journey despite all the constant attacks and risk of mind control. Our heroes are introduced as Sanzo, the chain-smoking, misanthropic, disillusioned monk with a revolver. Goku, the friendly and exuberant monkey boy with an insatiable appetite. Goku, the ladies' man who loves drinking and gambling, and Hakai, who's intelligent, empathetic, and calm. Considering the anime's satirical nature, these characters are the antithesis of their novel counterparts. Needless to say, you should not expect Saiyuki to be a faithful retelling of The Journey to the West, as it's basically an alternate universe where none of those events happen the same way and everyone's personalities are different. I think the only similarity is Goku spending 500 years in prison and being freed by Sanzo. Thankfully, its experience grew far beyond a simple parody. It details our heroes as they gradually unravel, revealing how their past intertwine and the traumatic events that scarred them. Their respective backstories become the premise for several standalone episodes, reopening their emotional wounds. These episodes created the sensation that the Sanzo party really cared for each other, despite all the previous infighting, which there's quite a lot of. It honestly feels like the type of sentimental and heartwarming content you'd find in something like Fruits Basket, or on High School Host Club, or The Wallflower. Surprisingly, this degree of writing extends to most of its antagonists, whether it's the recurring antagonist, the Kogaji Party, or villains from their several battle arcs. They all have painful past bonding them together and, in some cases, are heroes. My only complaint is that Yaone and Linlin could have been developed more, but it's clear Saiyuki mainly focuses on the men because it's pretty gay. They even have the fan service to prove it. Although it's not my thing, it wasn't frequent enough to hinder my enjoyment. Also, considering one of my 10 out of 10 anime depicts a dude executing the most tactical, stealth aquatic oral fart extractions in history, I think I can manage Saiyuki. From my perspective, I saw it as a sentimental bond between sexually ambiguous dudes. Nevertheless, the character writing I praised carried over to its standalone episodes, fulfilling various interests, including action, drama, comedy, suspense, mystery, and romance. My first impression was that the TV series was loaded with filler, so I began reading the manga in parallel. Surprisingly, some episodes were and others weren't, but most were enjoyable regardless of their canonical status. I loved how there's so much range to these episodes, you never know what you'll get. I mean, sometimes it's obvious when our heroes walk into a trap of evil yokai attempting to steal their souls. Still, plenty of episodes surround random, fairly detailed characters as the Sanzo party tries to save them, and they're not always successful. There's also a curious moral ambiguity to many of these one-off characters. Maybe we learn they did something terrible because of their twisted sense of justice, or they're just at their wits' end from watching everyone they know slowly become drones. These complicated situations can leave you feeling for these characters. Of course, other times, it's pretty comical and lighthearted, as the Sanzo party deals with bad impersonators, or they run around thinking Sanzo turned into a demon. One of my favorites was when Hakai got fed up with his slovenly companions and left, waiting for them to realize how much they needed him and sacrifice their dignity to apologize. I'd also count most of its arcs as episodic content, as they're self-contained and conclude without noticeable impact on Saiyuki lore or plot. Although their stories are better than the best standalone episodes, they're longer, spanning 10 to 15 episodes. Here you learn more about the villains. The stakes are higher, they take greater tolls on our heroes and their friendships. They also have the best action scenes, which I'll expand upon in my next segment. Moving on to Saiyuki's watch order, everything I've expressed so far are my general views of the franchise regarding the content you'll experience most. However, there are outliers, and in this section, I'll briefly explain my thoughts, pros and cons, and my reasoning for placing them in the order that I do. As you're about to discover, the Saiyuki timeline is an absolute disaster, but I hope this makes things easier. Of course, this is not a definitive watch order, it's just my opinion. The first entry is Saiyuki, a 50-episode series laying the foundation for everything. It introduces the main plot, the main characters, and recurring antagonist. It gives everyone's backstories. There's many enjoyable standalone episodes and a fairly decent battle arc. Unfortunately, its fight animation isn't great. Sometimes enemies slide across the screen like they're on paper. They also overuse still images and speed lines, though its best fight animation is reserved for battles against significant enemies. On the bright side, its character designs are fantastic, and their animation limitations are repeatedly overcome by their creative direction and storyboards. It goes to show that creative vision often trumps cell count. By the way, most of these beautiful scenes are in its standalone episodes, and sometimes almost the entire episode sports its unique flair. Next up is Saiyuki Reload, the direct sequel to the original series. If you read manga, the 1997 Saiyuki series covers the events of the first two anime series. There's also a lot of non-canon content in both, but I enjoyed most of it. I'm just providing you with another option. Not to put a damper on your expectations, but this was actually my favorite anime entry. I just have the best memories with it, I really liked its standalone episodes, and it's got a nice battle arc towards its conclusion. Of course, your mileage may vary. This is also when I understood what Saiyuki was all about and learned to accept it for not following its main plot. I didn't have a video like this to clarify things, so you might find the first series just as good. Reload's visuals are in the same ballpark as the original series, though I don't know if the specific animation staff carried over. Either way, the fights could be better, and I was impressed by the contrast of how nicely they presented the emotional moments. Moving on to Saiyuki Reload Gunlock episodes 1 through 12. You can watch all of its 26 episodes if you want. They're not bad, but the last 14 episodes are remade in a later entry, which I enjoyed more. Again, Gunlock's strengths and weaknesses align with everything I've stated so far. If you like the first two entries, you're in for more enjoyment. 2017 Saiyuki Reload Blast is where things start getting weird, as if they weren't weird enough already. It's a two-part series. The first is our hero's backstory. I mean, it goes far back, it details their past lives 500 years ago. Don't worry, that's not a spoiler, as it's part of the exposition early in the first series. The second part is a standalone battle arc set within Saiyuki's present timeline. I enjoyed it, its fights, and the newly introduced characters. However, its first half was more interesting as its canonical implications were more substantial. As you can tell, it receives a dramatic visual overhaul as everything it looks and is animated better than everything I previously listed. It's on another level of how bloody and dark Blast is compared to its predecessors. It also has several heavy-hitting emotional scenes in store. Moving on to the most recent entry, Saiyuki Reload Zero-In. It's the remake of episodes 13 through 26 of Saiyuki Reload Gunlock. I didn't include it earlier because I felt more satisfied with its conclusion, even though there might be more installments in the future. Comparatively speaking, I preferred everything about this version. I liked its art and animation. The fights were more enjoyable, I was more engaged in the antagonist's backstories and personalities, and I enjoyed the drama and general character interaction between our heroes. Next up begins a short grouping of enjoyable yet optional content starting with Saiyuki Reload Burial. It's a 3-episode OVA depicting everyone's backstory in a more gritty and mature way. It's kinda like Saiyuki's Samurai X Trust and Betrayal because it's darker, more emotional, and better animated than its respective TV counterpart. I also preferred how their backstories were explained here over the first anime, but I didn't want to overcomplicate things. Needless to say, you should definitely check this out. I place it right after the first series. Moving on, we have Saiyuki Requiem. It's an action-oriented movie sharing the same dark and moody and well-animated aesthetic of Reload Burial, but prioritizing battles. I honestly think something like this is desperately needed early on, especially considering the underwhelming deliverance of action in the original series. For that reason, I'm placing it right after Reload Burial. So there you have it, my recommended watch order for Saiyuki. If you liked most of what I said in this beginner's guide, then you're probably going to enjoy yourself. Also, if you're wondering about language options, I watch these subbed, so I recommend doing that. However, if you prefer dubs, one thing to keep in mind is that the English voice actors are not the same in every entry. Overall, I enjoyed Saiyuki, but I'd be lying if I said I enjoyed it from the very beginning. It's more of an acquired taste that I learned to appreciate. I hope this video reaches an audience who can now appreciate it earlier than I did. I give the entire Saiyuki franchise a 7 out of 10. It's not for everyone, but I think you'll know if it's right for you. Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to channel supporters on Patreon. If you enjoy these videos and want to ensure the stability of the channel making them, head on over to Patreon. We have Discord chats a few times a month, and it's pretty chill. My next project is a multimedia beginner's guide to the Journey to the West. See you then.